Hello, everybody, and welcome to Galactic Wisdom. Here I am again in my car. For those of you that don't know, I travel around a lot in order to investigate paranormal and alien phenomena. And I have spent the last couple of weeks in Sedona, Arizona, investigating in particular a place called Bradshaw Ranch, which is a UFO and paranormal hotspot. So I'm going to talk for maybe 10 minutes about my experiences at Bradshaw Ranch, which are very interesting. And then I'm going to move on to the subject of the title of today's show. How am I to know the good side from the bad? Now, some of you will recognize that sentence as being a question that Luke Skywalker asks Yoda in the Star Wars movies. How am I to know the good side from the bad? And it's very, very important. And I'm going to be talking quite a lot about Star Wars because it relates very strongly to real life in a lot of the things that are going on in the world right now. But I'm gonna come back to that in a little bit after I have talked about my recent adventures in Sedona. So Bradshaw Ranch is this place for decades has been recognized as having unusual phenomena in the ranch around that area. Things, paranormal things like shadow figures and orbs, obviously bumps, bangs, strange sounds in the night, but also UFO activity, alien type activity, strange portal-like windows opening up in the sky, vortexes or vortices on the property, people going onto the property and getting radiation burns and having weird sort of time loss experiences. So there's a lot of weird stuff going on at Bradshaw Ranch. And the reason why I really took an interest in this is because about a month and a half ago, I visited Bradshaw Ranch. Now, when I say I visited the ranch, I didn't go into the ranch. I walked up to the front gates of the ranch. And when I did that, I found myself confronted with an orb, a hovering blue, diffuse orb floating in the air about this big, probably, and seemed to be interacting with me. It seemed to be responding to my words. If you look back at previous episodes of this show, you will see that I have played that video a few times on this show. So I went back a couple of weeks ago to Sedona to try to see if I could reconnect with that orb. And I tried all sorts of different things, from meditation to just roaming around. I even constructed an artificial orb, out of a blue balloon, which I blew up to about the same size as the orb that I saw. And I put inside a LED tea light, tied it all up and hung it from a string at the entrance to Bradshaw Ranch to see if that might attract in any of these orbs. Now, in the animal world, it's often quite easy to fool animals into thinking that, for example, if you put your hand in a sock that's painted to look like a particular bird species, and you go like this, then you can trick the baby birds into thinking that that's a real mother bird head, and you can feed baby birds and you can interact with them. People going out to do nature photography very often will dress up in costumes that look a little bit like the animals that they're trying to interact with. And it is known that in such endeavors, that often results in success because the animals don't realize they're dealing with a human being dressed up like an animal. Now, I don't know if these orbs, what level of intelligence they have. I just don't know. We might assume they have a higher level of intelligence than typical animals. Even more, we might assume, than humans. but we don't know. So I tried this to see if I could attract in orbs. It didn't work. I sat there waiting for 3 or 4 hours late at night one time to see if orbs would come in and be attracted to the orb that I had made. I had made. Even if they were intelligent enough to know that it was not a real orb that I made, they might have at least come in to have a bit of a laugh at what I was doing, but they didn't seem to do that either. So, you know, I'm a scientist, and I have to say that when you do an experiment, whatever the outcome, it's not a failure. It's a success if you manage to get some kind of data. And my experiment was a success because the data that I got was orbs were not all flocking towards me, around me, to communicate with me. Some people had let me know that they thought that that orb wanted constant communication with me, wanted to take it to the next step. But the evidence has shown that when I did show up, well, they didn't. So I have to recognize the truth of the results of that experiment, and accept that, well, for some reason, the orbs decided not to come and communicate with me again. Now, my theory is that they communicated with me purposefully a month and a half ago, and that was deliberate. That was clearly deliberate and interactive, and you could tell that there was a consciousness that was choosing to be there and interact with me. So there was definitely that sort of introduction, you might say, between me and an orb. But my theory is now the reason they're not ongoing with this communication, they don't presently see a value in communicating with me as an individual. My theory is that they're waiting for the next step. They've given me the introduction, and now the next step is for me to show that that me and maybe others are ready for further communication, for a deeper level of connection. And the deeper level of connection, I theorize, is when I show up at Bradshaw Ranch with a group of people who are all on board with the philosophy, my philosophy of universal peace, universal love, universal well-being. When we as human beings can act as a collective, a unified, harmonious collective, instead of as squabbling, bickering, selfish individuals, then some of these higher level beings are going to pay more attention to us. So I think that that is probably, now this is a guess, this is not knowledge, it's a guess, a theory, a hypothesis. But when I show up at Bradshaw Ranch with a group of people who are all kind, loving, generous people, then I think that might be when they come out and show themselves again. So in about 3 weeks, I'm going to lead an expedition, another expedition back out to Bradshaw Ranch, and I'm hoping that a few people will come with me. If you like the idea of being on that ambassadorial team that is going to go to Bradshaw Ranch with me and sit there and meditate and demonstrate to the advanced non-human entities in that location that we are ascended enough to be peaceful, to peacefully connect with each other and be there in a unified, coordinated way, then please email me. My email address is rupertcontactguy@gmail.com. rupertcontactguy@gmail.com. Just send me an email and ask for the details, and I will send you the details when I've put them together. So that's going to be like a contact adventure, maybe a weekend in Sedona where we do other things, and we go to Bradshaw Ranch and try and connect with those beings. So What did I experience at Bradshaw Ranch that is of interest? I told you what I didn't experience. Now, what did I experience? Well, the first evening when I got there, I sat down and I meditated in front of this big metal gate. At one point, something banged on the gate really loudly. This is the middle of nowhere. There was nobody else that I could see there, and yet somebody banged on that gate and basically turned that gate into like a big wind chime or bell. It rang and rang very loudly, and I don't know what that was. I was videoing at the time, and I haven't had a chance to look back at the video. Maybe I'll see some alien orb come in and bang into the gate. Maybe I'll see a Bigfoot come along and throw a stone at the gate. I don't know what I'm going to see, but that was very interesting because when I opened my eyes, I could not see anybody, anything. Um, that's very probably, it was very probably a paranormal or an alien um, phenomena, phenomenon. Um, what else did I experience? When I was walking around that ranch late at night by myself, I had a flashlight in my hand, and this flashlight has different settings. You push the button, and it goes from bright to a bit dimmer to a bit dimmer, and then to flashing. My my flashlight or my headlamp, it was a headlamp I was holding in my hand, without me touching the button, once when I was holding it and once when I wasn't holding it, it switched to the flashing mode for about 5 seconds and then turned back. Um, that I find very odd because there was no pushing of the physical buttons to make that happen. So there was very likely some kind of electromagnetic interference. Maybe there was an entity there that was somehow manipulating the light. So that I found very interesting. There was a tall tower uh, on Bradshaw Ranch with a windmill on it. You know, I'm not sure what the right terminology is. Like a windmill is something that spins and there's a millstone underneath it, and it's called a mill and a millstone because it used to grind grain. That's what a millstone, a windmill used to be. I know Trump refers to wind turbines, which generate electricity, as windmills. They're not windmills. But I'm not sure what the one in Bradshaw Ranch would be, because I think it was a water pump, a wind pump, maybe. I don't know. But anyway, this big circular thing with blades on it was absolutely 100% still. There was no wind. And I walked up to it and I looked at it and I filmed it. And then as I stepped away from it, I heard creaks and groans behind me, and it was spinning. And I've been told by some researchers there that it does that, that it is, they feel it to be paranormal in nature, that it spins as some kind of a message to the people who are there. What that message is probably, we're here too. But that's what I experienced, and it was a bit creepy. I hosted a contact event with a small group of people on Bradshaw Ranch. We sat around in some chairs that were outside the main buildings, and um, while I was leading that contact meditation, there were several bumps and bangs and knocks coming from the buildings. And with me were one or two researchers that go there every weekend. And they said that is very unusual. They hear occasional bangs, occasional knocks, but what they experienced with me was a definite response to me reaching out to any beings that were there peacefully during my contact meditation. So I came away from my visit to Bradshaw Ranch feeling pretty convinced that there were consciousnesses there. In fact, I could feel them at times. I have physiological symptoms, things like high pitched tones, ringing tones in my ears when non-human entities come close to me. I can feel muscles starting to twitch due to anomalous electromagnetic presences. and I was definitely feeling the presence of non-human entities there. I'm not sure if I could feel the presence of human spirits there, but I could hear lots of banging and knocking around me when I was there, which I suspect may have been human spirits. It was kind of cool to wander through the ranch and look inside the buildings. It's an old film set, actually. They used to film westerns out there, among other things. And I'm a bit of an Elvis fan, and one of Elvis's movies was filmed out there called Stay Away Joe. And I don't know if I've even ever watched that movie. I certainly can't remember it, but I'm going to have to check it out again now because Elvis went to Sedona and filmed a movie there. Um, what else did I experience out there? Now, there are claims that there is an underground military base there. And I do not know if there is or isn't, but I will tell you that uh, Bradshaw Ranch is surrounded by mountains. And on one of the slopes of one of the mountains, even though there's no visible light there, through my infrared night vision camera, there is a very bright source of infrared light coming from one of those mountains. Now, I don't know if that's a secret underground base or somebody hunting in the mountains with an infrared illuminator so that they can shoot animals up there. I don't know what was going on there. A geologic hotspot, I do not know, but I found that interesting. And when I arrived there one night at about 10 p.m., I was hearing gunfire. I was hearing significant gunfire. It wasn't just a hunter shooting an animal, it was quite rapid gunfire. It seemed to be very muffled, but also very relatively close. If I were to guess what gunfire shooting practice, military shooting practice might sound like if they were doing it inside an underground base, that's probably what it would sound like. But I don't know. I'm speculating. What I will say is, I don't. I try not to judge people. I don't know all the facts. Most people don't know all the facts when they judge others, whether it's a person or a group that they're judging, an organization that they're judging. Knowing all the facts is kind of impossible unless you are that person or you are a member of that group. And I'm trying not to judge the industrial military complex. If they've got a secret base out there, maybe that they've got a good reason for having a secret base out there. As long as they're kind to uh, people and they're kind to the non-human entities that are out there, I'm good with that. But I'm not going to try and judge that. So industrial military complex, don't worry, I'm not trying to expose you or to criticize you or to get you in trouble. Who knows? Maybe if I knew what you knew, I'd be doing the same thing that you were doing. I don't know. But anyway, those are some of the things that I experienced at Bradshaw Ranch. Now, there are definitely anomalous lights in the sky. There are a steady stream of bright lights that fly every night up into the sky, a very steady stream, like one every 10 seconds, that sort of thing, streaming up into the sky above the mountains to the north of Bradshaw Ranch. Now, I know there are people that look at those lights and call them UFOs or UAPs. In the sense that they're unidentified, yes, they're UFOs or UAPs. And they don't have navigation or collision strobes or lights on them. They don't have the flashing lights on them, at least not that I could see, which which makes them anomalous, because human-made craft, even military craft, are supposed to have those flashing lights on them. And yes, there are planes and helicopters flying around that area with flashing lights. What's anomalous is the number of those craft that are out there, or objects that are out there, and the fact that they don't seem to be conforming to human-made lighting systems, but they're not making sudden sharp right angled turns that defy our physics and things like that. They could be military craft that just don't have the right lights on them. So I'm not sure that I would call them. I can't conclude that they're alien tech, but they might. But they might be. They might be alien craft that are just moving slowly so that they don't appear to be alien. I don't know. But it's definitely interesting because there's not supposed to be any kind of military base out there in that area. So there are anomalous lights out there. Now, many people that I've talked to have seen real flying saucers and flying octagons and flying triangles and various um, different structured alien looking craft out there in the skies. I just haven't seen that myself yet, so I've got to withhold judgment on that. Now, what I am doing by going out to places like Bradshaw Ranch, Area 51, Marfa to see the Marfa lights, Brown Mountain to see the Brown Mountain lights, Skinwalker Ranch. What I'm doing by myself going to those places is I am getting those experiences firsthand. I'm looking into the sky firsthand to see if the claims that people make have validity or not. And getting that personal experience is the only way that you can acquire personal knowledge. And knowledge is personal. So gaining personal experience is the only way that any individual can acquire knowledge. You can't know something to be true if somebody else tells it to you. And that's a mistake that a lot of people make. Even with science subjects, even with respected scientists, if they teach you something about, say, subatomic particles, you can't know that to be true unless you've experienced the same research experiments that the scientists have experienced. They might not be telling you the truth. So gaining personal experience by going to paranormal places or places that are UFO hotspots, that's the only way that you're going to gain knowledge about those phenomena. Now, people follow me, people watch my videos, people listen to my reports that I make about what I experience when I go to those places. And hopefully people learn in time that my reporting is quite reliable. But it's not, listening to me talk is not giving you knowledge. It's only giving you knowledge on what I am claiming to have experienced. So if any of you would like to come on any of these adventures with me, any of these expeditions to any of these UFO hotspots, send me a message, because I am going to be going to, this is what I do. I go to places like that. And the next time I go to Sedona, maybe you want to come with me. The next time I go to Area 51 or the mountains outside of Las Vegas, south of Area 51, where the tall whites live, or any of these places that I investigate. If you want to go to any of those, then email me, Rupert, contactguy@gmail.com, and I will send you details of how you can join me. So that's what I'm doing. And I'm going to say that in comparison to many UFO researchers and investigators who don't go and experience these things for themselves. They sit at home, or they sit in a library, or they sit by their computer, and they look up what other people have reported. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's good. To do any kind of research, to get any kind of information in, is good. And I'm not criticizing any UFO investigators or researchers for doing that. But I am taking it a step further. I am taking it to the level of personal experience and therefore knowledge, rather than data acquisition from other people. Um, and that is an important distinction, and I kind of want to point that out so that people can see the value of what I personally am doing here. Now, I do encounter in my travels other paranormal investigators, UFO researchers, and some of them do go out into the field and investigate. And when I was at Bradshaw Ranch, I did encounter 2 or 3 other researchers and investigators out there. And I'm not going to tell you their names. I prefer not to promote or demote anybody on my show. But what I will say is that their methodologies differ from each other, and they differ from mine. I was able to see how some of those researchers are in conflict with each other. They attack each other. I was able to see how there's even like legal disputes going on between them due to defamation of character and things like this. So it's a shame that humans who are trying to connect with these higher entities are drawn into what is lower levels of interaction with each other. I did see one of the researchers attempting to communicate or connect with Bigfoot by throwing large rocks into the forest as a provocation, hoping to get rocks thrown back at them, which had happened to them once before. And I was actually standing relatively close to that researcher when I heard a large thud, and a couple of yards from us, a large rock had been hurled through the air and landed in the mud close to us. And I wasn't that thrilled to be in that situation. Throwing rocks at anybody is not something that I personally am okay with. And being around somebody that's doing that didn't make me feel comfortable. But I did go back there the next day, the next night, and apologize to the Bigfoot's feet. And I didn't have any rocks hurled at me, thankfully. And I came out unscathed. Well, apart from some mosquito bites. But you can watch some documentaries out there in the world of UFOs and the paranormal and see that in some situations, these UFO researchers, investigators feel that the end justifies the means. They will fire flamethrowers into the sky to try and communicate with the beings that they think are in the sky. They will fire rockets and launch explosives and hurl abuse and be very negative at entities that are out there in order to get a response. Personally, I would prefer to live in harmony with them without receiving a response than to live in conflict with them and have proof of their existence. That's just my personal judgment on that. And so this personal judgment about morality leads us to the title of today's show. How am I to know the good side from the bad? What's to say that my way of trying to interact with non-human entities is any different, is any better than the methodologies that other researchers use? If I were to ask you the question, is it possible for any people to do bad things thinking that they're actually doing good things? I suspect that some of you, probably most of you, if not all of you, would say, yes, that's possible. Sometimes people do what they think is a good thing, but actually it's a bad thing. I could ask the question, do you think that any individuals out there in the world ever do something that is wrong, morally wrong, but with the impression that what they're doing is morally right? And I suspect that most people, if not all of the people listening to this show, would say, well, yeah, a lot of people think that what they're doing is right when actually what they're doing is wrong. I can ask the question, do you think ever anybody who is a bad person is seen by others as being a good person? And I suspect that a lot of people out there would think, yes, that happens, that's possible. And in contrast to that, do you think there's any, let's see which way around, any good people out there who other people misjudge to be bad people? There's a lot of people getting it wrong, not getting the difference between the good side of the force and the bad side of the force. And why is that? How is that possible? The fact that Luke Skywalker could ask that question, how am I to know the good side from the bad, indicates that it's not as easy as you might think. And one of the responses that Yoda gives to Luke, I'm not going to be able to say this word for word, so it'll be paraphrasing, but he basically says that Jedi never use the Force for attacking others. They only use the Force in defense. And Yoda is onto something there. Yoda is onto something there. I can see. Well, let's continue with Star Wars for a little bit before I apply this to real life. Think about that guy Palpatine. Now, you probably don't need to be a Star Wars fan to know that in the original trilogy, there's this evil person called the Emperor who runs the evil galactic empire. And that emperor's name was Palpatine. And he was known as Palpatine before he was known as the Emperor. And he manages to trick a lot of people into thinking that he's good. He tricks just about everybody. People who are bad often don't look bad. The people who are most successfully dishonest are those who don't come across as being dishonest. They come across as being honest and good. And Palpatine was very good at convincing others that he was on the side of good. And even though his policies became more and more violent, more and more hostile, he manipulated people into thinking that he was good, such that he was voted into power as an emperor. And when that happened, people celebrated. Most people celebrated. The manipulated people celebrated. The people who felt that they were going to gain something personally from the emperor being crowned or made the emperor, they celebrated. But there were some perceptive individuals who could see that this guy, not everything is right, not everything is good with Palpatine. And so the emperor was voted into power. And that might just be to many people, well, that's just a story. But then if you look at real life and you look around the world at different leaders and how many populations of people in many different countries have voted into power and continue to give support to dictators, and people who are bad. I'm not sure that evil applies to all of them, but people who do bad things to others, who are generally seen often by people with perspective as being bad. That happens. How is it? Um, I'm not gonna tell you which side I'm on here, but I'm just going to say it because U.S. politics is so controversial. But half of the people in the US, approximately, feel that President Trump is a wonderful, good person with good policies that are good for the US and good for the world. And the other half feel that he's the opposite, that he's a bad person with bad policies that are bad for the US. And you've got this great divide. And I don't need to tell you which side of that divide I'm on for all of us to see that there's something very odd going on about why the country is so split. How can half of the people perceive reality one way and half of the country perceive reality the other way? Could it be that hypothetically one side is less intelligent than the other side? Well, that doesn't really work. It doesn't really work because there's a geographic distribution to how people vote. Okay, so could it be that the people in certain states are less intelligent than others? No, that doesn't really work. Humans are humans. Okay, so what's happening in some states compared with other states? Why is one state predominantly voting one way while another state is predominantly voting the other way? And the same can be true of countries around the world in how they vote. Um, it can also be true of how people's religious beliefs, why people in one state or one country uh, follow one religion, where people in another country or another state follow another religion. Well, it's not intelligence. It is the exposure that people have to information, information or disinformation. And in some countries, in some countries and some states, people are exposed to certain religions, certain political viewpoints, and in other states, they're exposed to different political viewpoints, different religious viewpoints. And what we end up having to deduce from all of this, if we think about it logically, is not that people in one state are bad or less intelligent. It's not that they're inherently less moral. It's that they are susceptible to accepting as being true that which they're exposed to. And that is really important for humans to note, because whatever state you're in and whatever country you're in, you're the same species. You're the same species. And how can you know that you're right and they're wrong? How can you know that? It's very, very hard for us to be able to truly determine the good side from the bad if we only rely on the information that we're given that's given to us from others. What we have to do is, well, there's lots of different levels to this. I'm going to start off by telling you what's the safest thing you can do. What's the safest thing you can do when it comes to doing right or doing wrong? When it comes to how can you know the good side from the bad? You have to not trust or believe or accept as being true anything that anybody else says, because you can't. It's a intellectual impossibility to know that what somebody else is telling you is correct. unless they're prepared to go through the math with you, like y is 2 plus 2 equal to 4. Well, they can prove the math to you, you can understand the logic of it, then you can get it. But if somebody says to you, hey, I know this person called Katie, and she did this bad thing, you can't know that that's true, even if it's a news station telling you that. Now, the only way to acquire knowledge, to know something, is to experience it for yourself. So if you're trying to make moral decisions based on what other people are telling you they've experienced, you can't. You cannot do that with validity. If somebody walks over to you and hits you over the head with a stick, well, you were there. You experienced it. You experienced it yourself, so it's knowledge to you, so you know that that person did something bad, okay? Because you had the bad happen to you, so you know it. And if you saw that person coming at you with a stick and swinging it at you, you would then be justified by swinging a stick at them and hitting them before their stick hit you. But that's self-defense, and that's what Jedi do, self-defense. And but what Jedi don't do is when somebody tells you, hey, Katie did something bad, and I think she's going to do something bad again. What Jedi don't do is go over to Katie and take their stick or their lightsaber and swing it at Katie, because you might have just been manipulated. So in the third episode of Star Wars, if you know Star Wars, there's this young man called Anakin Skywalker, and Palpatine, the guy who turns into the evil emperor, well, Palpatine befriends Luke Skywalker. Not Luke Skywalker, Anakin Skywalker. He befriends Anakin Skywalker, and he manipulates him. They become friends, and when it comes time for the good guys, for the Jedi, when they realize that the Palpatine is the bad guy, and they go and try and arrest him, Anakin Skywalker is torn, and he feels that that his friend is going to be attacked there, and he defends his friend by killing one of the Jedi. Anakin is manipulated into doing something very bad, killing one of the Jedi, by darknesses, by dark forces, by Palpatine, by the Emperor. And this manipulation that happens, this can happen to any of us. Maybe not, to the dark side, so you turn into Darth Vader, but any of us can be manipulated into doing bad, into harming other people, even if we think we're protecting other people by doing it. So let's go back to this question. How am I to know the good side from the bad? Well, there is an answer to this, and it's a very easy answer. Don't harm anyone for any reason. If you can live your life not harming anyone for any reason, then you're not doing bad to anyone for any reason. Then you're safe. You're a pacifist. You're an extremist in that you are extremely peaceful. And extremely peaceful people aren't on the dark side of the Force. Peaceful people who do not hurt others are good. That's what good means. Good is when you're acting in a way that is good for others and not bad for others. If you are going to put conditions on being good to people, if you are going to put conditions on not being bad to people, then you fail and you fall to the dark side of the Force. Now, Luke Skywalker knew that the Emperor was a bad person. But in Return of the Jedi, he kept making a decision to put down his lightsaber and not strike down the Emperor when he could. He kept trying to do no harm. And he succeeded because of that. His goodness in trying to do the right thing actually was an example and emotionally touched Darth Vader, who previously was Anakin Skywalker, and Anakin Skywalker decided to follow Luke's example, basically, and Luke succeeded, and Luke won the day because of his peacefulness. Now there was fighting involved. When somebody swings a lightsaber at you, you defend yourself. And he came close. He came close. He maybe stepped over the edge a little bit when he was goaded into fighting. When Darth Vader says, well, if you will not turn to the dark side, then maybe your sister will. And then Luke kind of lost control a little bit. So, Luke wasn't perfect, but he did still recognize the danger and throw down his lightsaber and say, no, I'm not going to finish this off. I'm not going to kill you. So how does any of this apply to us in our everyday lives? If you hurt anybody for any reason, then you're in danger of being on the dark side. And there's no way. You've got to understand that you're just as human as every other human on the planet. We're susceptible to being manipulated. It's not even like purposeful manipulation. We're susceptible to going with the flow of what other people think is true. We're susceptible to going with the flow even when it hurts others. So don't harm others. Just don't do it. And if somebody comes to you and says, hey, Katie over there did something bad, don't accept it as being true. And if you do accept it as being true, don't fall to the dark side by going and hurting Katie. That's like a punishment anyway. And philosophically, punishment, that's not the way to go. If you respond violently to people who are violent to you, you're just going to end up in this cycle of violence, and that's what is happening all around the world. The only way for you to be on the right side of the force, the light side of the force, is don't harm anybody. Now that might sound in a sentence to be easy, but it's not, because it means that when you feel that somebody's doing something wrong, when somebody tells you that somebody's doing something wrong, and you want to react to that in a way that's going to hurt the person that you think is doing something wrong, you have to not do that. You have to not respond to that. That's the only safe way to go, because when you start responding to it, you are causing harm to others. You're not being peaceful, and you might be being manipulated. You might be going the wrong way. And if you harm anybody for any reason, it is bad. It is bad for that person. You are doing a bad thing. You can't be a good person while you're doing bad things to anyone, even if you think it's justified, even if it feels right to hurt somebody. I'm presently watching a movie that came out on Disney Plus, The Amateur, and I haven't got fully into it, but basically it's a revenge movie, and I'm watching it, and I'm looking forward to the guy getting his revenge on those people who killed his wife. I'm looking forward to it. That will make me feel good when that happens. But that's a feeling that is not on the good side of the force. You have to suppress those dark feelings. Don't hurt people for any reason, apart from if you're defending yourself in immediate self-defense. That's the only thing that works. I'm a karate instructor, and I've had people try and attack me and attack people I've been with, and I've blocked those attacks. I haven't needed to actually attack back. I've blocked those attacks, but I did intervene in a way that I suppose is non-peaceful. That's justified because you might be substituting one violent act for another, but if you can stop somebody from harming others, from harming you, it might stop them from harming others too. So it's more peaceful to intervene with direct self-defense. But if somebody tells you, hey, this person is out there and needs to be stopped because he's hurting people, you're being manipulated, almost certainly. Well, you are being manipulated, and probably dishonestly. So, how am I to know the good side from the bad? Don't hurt anybody in any way. Not verbally, not in posts. Don't criticize people. If you criticize people, you're attacking them. Don't attack people in any way. Don't attack them verbally, not in posts, not physically. Don't support political parties that are going out there attacking others. Don't support policies that attack or harm or hurt others. That's my advice for today. That's my galactic wisdom for today. Is that if you want to be a Jedi, you have to understand that being a Jedi does not involve going out and just attacking, being a strong person, controlling people. No, being a Jedi, being on the right side, being on the light side of the Force, is all about being peaceful. Not attacking people so that we can have peace, but being peaceful so that we can have peace. And only being violent in self-defense. Okay, those are my words of wisdom for today. If any of you want to join me on my next expedition, I will repeat again, Rupert, contactguy@gmail.com. I wish you all peace, love, and happiness. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you all next week. Goodbye for now.